Hello, and welcome to Bad Item Academy, where we take a look at some of the worst items Risk of Rain 2 has to offer, and I show you how to best utilize them. Today, we'll be looking at one of the most baffling item designs in Risk of Rain 2 history. It's an item built in such an odd way that some people legitimately don't even know if the item is underpowered or OP busted. We are, of course, going to be talking about the Benthic Bloom. Benthic Bloom is one of only two void legendary items, the other being Pluripotent larva. It is the corrupted form of the 57-leaf clover, meaning that any 57-leaf clover you acquire with this item in your inventory will turn into more of this item. Unlike all three previous items we looked at on this channel, this one is a bit complicated, so bear with me. Once this item enters your inventory, nothing immediately changes. But at the beginning of each new stage you enter, after going through a teleporter or portal, this item will choose 3 of your passive items at random. Then, it will upgrade those items to a random item from the same item pool 1 rarity above it. In other words, if it chose a common item, it will turn it into an uncommon item. If it chose an uncommon item, it will turn it into a legendary. If it chose a legendary, well, yeah, that's the thing. It can't choose legendary, or any other item type for that matter. It will only choose between common and uncommons to upgrade. What this effectively means is that the longer you have this item in your inventory, the more uncommon and legendary your inventory will look. And eventually, if given enough stages, it will fill your entire inventory with legendary items. Compounding that is the fact that it can essentially duplicate itself by turning uncommons into 57-leaf clovers and then corrupting those into more Benthic blooms, which speeds up the process and makes even more of your items get upgraded at the beginning of each stage. So that was a whole lot, but it seems pretty clear, right? Benthic Bloom upgrades your items. What is there not to love? Well, there's just a little problem. Well, actually several of them, but we have to start somewhere.
That's a legend.
Legendary items in Risk of Rain 2 kind of suck. Not all of them, definitely not all of them. Items like Head Stompers, Sonorous Whispers, Brilliant Behemoth, and 57-leaf Clover, we'll discount that one because this item prevents you from picking that one up. All of these items are very good and can change the outcome of your run drastically, as anything called legendary should. But some of these legendary items, they just stink. I'm sure I'll eventually go into depth into a few of these items, either through Bad Item Academy or Bad Item Academy shorts, but items like Aegis and Nukahana's Opinion are notorious for being even worse than some of the common items in the game. And even if we ignored all of these items that just always suck, a lot of legendary items are really only effective under certain conditions or when combined with other items. This becomes a real problem when Benthic Bloom is essentially removing those items from your inventory, rendering some of the legendaries almost useless. But okay, we still got generally a majority of legendary items that are useful mostly on their own and do lots of good. And additionally, because Benthic Bloom takes entire stacks of items and turns them into entire stacks of upgraded items, this means that you can get tons of those really good ones. So let's go back to all those aforementioned good items and see what would happen if we got a bunch of them. Head Stomper's effect is that, every 10 seconds, you can hold E to slam to the ground and deal up to 10,000% damage depending on the height which you fell from. If we were to add more stacks of this item, they would decrease the time between activation by a few seconds. I mean, I thought it would increase the damage potential of the slam, but alright. It is a bit shaky because it can take you over 10 seconds easily to get high enough to deal its best damage, but there are some characters that can get up to that height pretty quick. Never mind. Let's check out the next one. Sonorous Whispers' effect is that every time you kill a boss enemy, you get a guaranteed item drop. Additionally, there is a 4% chance for every elite enemy to do the same when killed. Okay. So I reckon that when you add stacks, you will get even more items dropping when either of these conditions are met. And right here it says that you increase the total chance of an elite enemy dropping an item by 1% per stack. I mean, if you got literally tens of them, it'd be definitely broken, but getting 10 of any really good item should be broken. This is considered the best item in the game after all. I really expected more. Oh well. This next one should do the trick. Brilliant Behemoth! Its effect is that every single attack you swing or shoot causes an explosion on enemies that deals 60% of that attack's original damage. Effective and simple. Surely stacking Behemoth will increase the damage even further. Even if it's not a full 60% increase, it's gotta be like 30 at least. Let's take a look here. None? None? It increases the explosion radius by 2.5 meters. That is a bottle of Kendall Jackson taller than LeBron James. Useless! Useless! So yeah, don't expect to be getting any real benefit out of stacking legendary items. There are a few exceptions, like Pocket ICBM if you have Plasma Shrimp or Harpoons on Engineer, Alien Head on certain characters, Harlot Afterburner if you have a good utility, and Ceremonial Dagger. But most of the time, it just isn't worth it to stack legendary items. With all this information in mind, it's almost certainly in our best interest to spread out our legendary items so that we get the best benefits of each of them. This means that you should avoid stacking items of all rarities in your run unless the item is too good just to not stack. Obviously, if you see an ATG or a watch printer, you should print to your heart's content. Just keep in mind that for every stack of unique items that you lose while doing this, you would increase the chance of all your ATGs or watches turning into some random bullshit. So yeah, I guess we solved that problem, right? Just don't stack all of your items. Don't print into massive stacks. If Benthic removes some of your damage, it'll replace it with more damage. If it takes away some of your healing, it'll replace it with more healing. If it takes away your speed, it'll, wait, what happens?
Please, I need this!
Okay, so, new problem. Speed in Risk of Rain 2 is argued to be the most important statistic in the game. It's so important that there is literally a big indicator on the top right of your screen that tells you if you're taking too long. Every minute that passes in your run increases the difficulty of the enemies and the amount that can spawn. It is also extremely important when dodging, as it can be the difference between kiting your enemies and being surrounded by them. For these reasons, getting and stacking speed items is essential to your victory. This becomes a bit of a problem when Benthic encourages you to spread out your items, and it becomes a much bigger problem in the instances where it actually does remove your speed. And unlike damage, resistances, and healing, speed is really only prominent in one category: common. The uncommon pool does have a speed item, but it only gives the player speed while they aren't actively engaged in combat, which is the only way you'll be able to strafe around bullets. And Legendary Pool doesn't have a single speed item unless you count that tiny buff to speed you get from Growth Nectar, or the 1 in 22 chance to activate Gorag's Opus with Bottled Chaos. This is really just a problem that cannot be avoided in any way. If you're a character without good movement by default, you will suffer without your speed items. And the ones with good mobility will start falling behind the clock, which really sucks because most of the characters that start with good mobility really struggle with catching up, and just kind of suck. Besides that one. It's just bad optics all around. So with all the semantics out of the way, how are we supposed to use this item to the best of our ability? Well, in order to understand that, we need to talk about one last feature of the item that I have yet to explicitly mention: item categories. Item categories is a mechanic that rarely matters in the game of Risk of Rain 2. Basically, almost every passive item falls into one or two of three code categories: damage, utility, and healing. Before Survivors of the Void, this was really only useful to determine which item's special chest to drop. But then along came Benthic Bloom, which Hopu decided would adopt this mechanic in a unique way. Instead of taking an item and just upgrading it into any passive item one rarity above it, Benthic upgrades the rarity and keeps the same item category as the original item. Now remember when I said that almost every passive item falls into one or two of three categories? There are 4 exceptions to this rule. The unimportant exception is Radiant Pearl, which cannot be affected by Benthic Bloom because it is a boss item. But the other 3 exceptions are very important, those being Item Scrap White, Item Scrap Green, and Item Scrap Red. These 3 items count as damage, utility, and healing all at once. So how is this useful? Simple. Dump all of your healing items into White Scrap and Green Scrap. If you've chosen to go with Benthic, you might as well swing for the fences with your gambling, and this is the best way to do it. Healing items are sort of notorious in Risk of Rain 2 for getting worse as the rarity goes up. The legendary healing items have such a bad reputation that some players actively go out of their way to avoid unlocking them. So instead of giving Benthic the opportunity to turn all of your healing into worse healing, why not just turn it into scraps so that it can have a good chance to choose a non-healing pool to turn your bundle into? This definitely doesn't help the speed problem by reducing the amount of item stacks Benthic can choose to take from, but if you've chosen to pick up Benthic voluntarily, this is easily the best trick you can implement in hopes of getting the perfect lottery pull and securing a god run. Besides healing items, though, it generally isn't worth it to scrap when you have Benthic. Some of you may encounter psychopaths who think that scrapping everything and hoping for the god roll was a valid strategy. These are the same fuckers who think that they can beat Vegas tables with 5-6 blackjack payout. Do not gamble in Vegas, that city's a fucking scam that Maze went to Google Maps. So where do we begin when attempting to fix this item? Well, how about we start off by
Making every legendary not stack like fucking shit.
This would genuinely take this item from the cesspool of discourse that it is to an actual conversation. Yes, this isn't actually touching the item at all, but it is something that just needs to be done in general for the health of the game's balance anyways. And while we're at it, how about we also just buff all the shit fuck legendary items that persist to this day? I'm not going over legendary changes in this video, but I will definitely be making a video about legendary items in the future. Okay then, let's pretend like we can't affect anything else in the game and only try improving Benthic. Looking at the two main problems, the player has little to no control over the items that Benthic takes, and stacking legendaries is generally bad. I went through a lot of different possibilities for how both of these problems could be amended, and I think I finally came up with something possibly genius. Instead of having an equal chance to upgrade any stack of items from your inventory, how about we make it so Benthic is much more likely to convert singular items as opposed to stacked items? What exactly do I mean by this? Let me show you. In this simplified example, I have 5 different item stacks in Benthic Bloom. Usually, once we transition to the next stage, Benthic will spin a wheel and choose 3 stacks at random, independent of any other factors. And oh, look at that. It just took my huge collection of hooves that I had printed and turned it into Berserker's Pauldrons. Yeah. So now let's reverse it and add my change. Now, when the stage transitions, it will instead take the number of items in each stack and compare them against each other. Stacks with more items have more mass to them, making them harder for Benthic to convert, so they get a much lower portion of the pie chart. And the items with only 1 or 2 stacks have less mass, making them easier to convert, so they get a larger portion of the pie chart. The pie chart spins 3 times and whoa, look at that, my hooves and watches are safe and it converted the other items. This is the essence of the change. It makes it so that the items you are stacking, likely being the items that you want to keep the most or the items you printed, are more likely to stay than your other items. This is already a huge buff to the control you have, but it also has some extra nuance. For example, you could intentionally leave 1 scrap unprinted so that the 1 scrap takes up a big portion of the pie chart, making your printed items even less likely to be converted. And of course, this change also helps the legendary stacking problem without changing the legendaries themselves by making it far less likely to get huge stacks of legendary items that do absolutely nothing. What do you think? Good change? Whatever change? Change that ruins the unique stupidity of the item? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And also, leave which item you'd like to see looked at next. So make sure to subscribe and like so I know to keep making them. I'll see you all soon with a really big project I'm really excited for, so have a good one and remember to get on the fucking boat, man.